TheLazyPeon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Resto Druid. What does it do, how does it play, what are the pros and cons, and ultimately deciding if you should give this thing a try. Like always in these videos, I like to include a brief guide on how to play the class with some gameplay, and my final thoughts and conclusion are always at the end of the video. So, for those of you who haven't played one before, what is a Resto Druid? A Resto Druid is a healing spec that utilises the nature around them to keep their allies alive, primarily using healing over time spells. They're extremely mobile and have more instant cast spells than any other healer. Like most healing specs, the Druid can also provide some extra DPS on the boss during low periods of damage, with their Moonfire and Wrath abilities costing no mana. During periods of high raid-wide damage, the Druid can dominate the healer meters by activating their big raid-wide cooldown, Tranquility, and topping everyone in the raid up with healing over time spells. Other than that, the Druid has access to some really unique and interesting talents that can be changed up on a fight-by-fight basis, as well as the raid-wide movement speed increase with the ability Stampeding Roar. So, how do you play this thing? Well, at a basic level, you need to try and keep up Life Bloom 100% of the time, as it will give you a chance to get a clear casting proc. This will make your next regrowth cost no mana. You should also try and keep up the mastery buff called Harmony. This will increase your healing over time spells based on the percentage of your mastery. This buff lasts 20 seconds and can be activated by casting Regrowth, Swift Mend or Healing Touch, although I'd recommend keeping it up with Healing Touch during periods of low damage, as you'll save a lot of mana over the course of a fight. I'd also recommend using an add-on such as Tell Me When to keep track of Life Bloom, the Harmony buff and clear casting procs. So, other than maintaining Life Bloom and Harmony, you should try and keep your groups topped up with Rejuvenation, which has quite a low mana cost. If there's 3 or more players standing close to each other, it's worth putting a Wild Mushroom down for AoE healing. If you take the glyph of Sprouting Mushrooms, which I'd personally say is a mandatory glyph for all Resto Druids, you can place the mushroom the same way a Shaman can place their healing rain. During phases of large raid-wide damage, you should cast Wild Growth on cooldown, until everyone's sufficiently topped up. Wild Growth is an extremely powerful spell but does cost a lot of mana, the equivalent of 4 rejuvenations, so only use it when necessary. As a Resto Druid, your Dispel ability is called Nature's Cure. It's always better to dispel something rather than trying to heal through it. If your tank is taking a large amount of damage, you can help mitigate this damage by casting your damage reduction ability, Ironbark, on them. Not only does this reduce all incoming damage to the target by 20%, it also increases the healing from your healing over time spells to that target by an additional 20%. If you're in need of a large emergency instant heal, you can use Nature's Swiftness macroed with Healing Touch to give you a large cost-free instant heal. If, for whatever reason, you're in need of large sustained healing whilst moving, you can spam Rejuvenation and an ability called Genesis to heal targets for the full amount they would receive from Rejuvenation over the course of 2.5 seconds. This is especially powerful in PvP and Arena. As a Druid, you also have a self-damage reduction ability called Barkskin. This reduces your damage taken by 20% for 12 seconds, and is on a rather short 1 minute cooldown. The final thing I'm going to mention before we move on to the next part is the order of mana efficiency for your large single target heals. Healing Touch is the most efficient single target heal with the highest healing output, lowest mana cost but longest cast time. Swift Mend is the next most mana efficient single target heal with the second lowest mana cost, second highest healing output, instant cast with a 15-second cooldown. Regrowth is your least efficient spell, costing the most mana, having a short cast time, no cooldown and healing less compared to the other two. I only try to use Regrowth when I get a clear casting proc unless someone's about to die, just to maintain efficiency. Next up, we're going to take a look at talents, glyphs and stats. For my level 15 talents, I always use Displace a Beast, as there's just so many encounters where this talent will save you from dying. With this, you can flat out avoid taking damage from some mechanics such as the Force Nova on Imperator Margok and getting flattened by Orgorger. For my level 30 talents, I take Ysera's Gift when raiding for passive healing and Cenarian Ward in PvP. My 45 talents, I use Typhoon because it's fun and knockbacks are sometimes handy in PvE. For my level 60 talents, I pretty much always take Incarnation Tree of Life because it's fun, powerful, and becoming a giant tree god makes me extremely happy. My 75 talents, I take Ursol's Vortex for PvE just to help tanks round up mobs. In Arena I'd take Mighty Bash, and for Battlegrounds I'd take Incapacitating Roar. For my 90 talents I take Nature's Vigil purely because it's on a much shorter cooldown than Heart of the Wild. For my 100 talents I take Germination for double rejuvenation, although Moment of Clarity could be useful if you're struggling with your mana. For my glyphs I use the Glyph of Regrowth. I currently use this so my Regrowth has a 100% chance to crit, meaning I can make the most out of my clear casting procs. The Glyph of Rejuvenation, this shortens the cast time of Healing Touch, which is always handy. The Glyph of Stampeding Roar. Stampeding Roar is such a powerful raid-wide cooldown. When I use it I want everyone in the raid to receive its benefit. Used correctly, it's a DPS increase for the entire raid. And I just want to mention the Glyph of Healing Touch. With the Druid tier 17 set bonus giving you 3 spellcasts for your Nature Swiftness, I'd probably swap this for the Glyph of Regrowth once I've got it, because more Nature Swiftness means more on-demand big heals and saving quite a lot of mana. The stat priorities for a Resto Druid are as follows: Intellect, Haste, Mastery, Multi-Strike, Crit and Versatility. So now let's take a look at some of the pros and cons of playing a Resto Druid, starting with the pros. Mobility. The Resto Druid is the most mobile healer in the game due to the amount of instant cast abilities it has. This makes dealing with mechanics and moving from avoidable damage extremely easy in comparison to the more static healers. This makes the spec very easy for a player new to raiding to get into. Cooldowns. As a Resto Druid, your Tranquility and Stampeding Roar are great cooldowns to bring to any raid group. Aside from these, if you go with the same talents as me, you'll also have Incarnation and Nature's Vigil, which are also very powerful when used together. Fun. Due to the fast-paced and mobile nature of the class, it's a healing spec that most people find really fun to play. I myself never understood how healing could be fun until I tried a Resto Druid. Prior to that, I'd only had experience as a Holy Pala back in Wrath. The Resto Druid was the class that made me really understand how fun healing can be, and if you've never tried healing before, this would be the first healer I'd recommend trying. CC. As most PvPers will be aware, Druids have some of the best crowd control abilities in the game in the form of Cyclone, Roots, Typhoon and Stuns, helping you lock down your enemies for an extended period of time. Now for the cons. Thinking of cons for the Resto Druid was the hardest part of making this video. The only thing they seem to lack in comparison to other healers such as the Holy Paladin is tank healing, which even that isn't too bad. The main thing I'd say Resto Druids struggle with is mana, especially if not played efficiently, although once you reach a certain item level that seems to be less of an issue. One thing I should mention about our big raid cooldown Tranquility is that it's a 7-second cast which we do while standing still, unless a hunter uses Aspect of the Fox. There's been times where I've had to stop casting it to move from a random raid mechanic, which doesn't feel great. From my own experience as a Resto Druid, I find myself craving fights with a large damage output, so I can top the meters. However, in fights with a low damage output I feel kinda less helpful in comparison to the absorb base healers, such as the Holy Paladins and Disc Priests, but even then, I can still contribute to the DPS instead of waiting for things to heal. Now we're going to take a look at a few abilities that I really enjoy with the Resto Druid. Tranquility. Every time this is off cooldown I get excited for the next time the raid takes big damage, because I know by the time it's finished casting everyone will be at full health. Finding the right moment to trank is something a good Resto Druid must do. Incarnation. I love Incarnation because it boosts the power of my Rejuvenation, Regrowth and Wild Growth. It looks and feels awesome and is on a reasonable cooldown. Displace a Beast. It's a better blink than the one mages have. Not only does it teleport you forward, but it increases your movement speed for a short time after too. This will get you out of so many bad positional situations. Typhoon. This ability is so much fun in PvP. I love being the guy that knocks people off the mountains in Eye of the Storm in a Rafi Basin. Okay, so now we're going to jump into a few minutes of gameplay so I can talk you guys through what I'm doing in a raid. Feel free to skip this part if you don't want to watch how I play this spec, as the conclusion will be right after. Okay, so we're in the Blackrock foundry on Heroic and we're going to kill Gruul. Pull time is going down, I'm going to pre-pot on one and get my mushroom up straight away. Next I'm going to get a life bloom up on the tank and get the harmony buff rolling. And now we've got a clear cast and proc, I'm just going to use this to refresh life bloom. Early on there's not much damage coming out of the boss, so I could have done some DPS but for some reason I didn't. And now I've got an Inferno Slice, and every time we cast this I know there's going to be big damage, so I can prepare for this by always casting Wild Growth. And I can even pre-cast it just to kind of maximise my healing. So I'm refreshing life bloom, refreshing my mushroom, and I'm just kind of moving out of the shatter, dealing with mechanics, topping everyone up. And the next thing I'm going to be thinking about is when should I use my Tranquility, because I like to use Tranquility early on in the fight so it'll come off cooldown for later. And at this point I'm probably thinking this Inferno Slice would be a good time, because any later and I might not get to use it. So there's big damage come out there from the boss. I'm a bit late using Tranquility, possibly one global cooldown too late, But now there's a colossal smash, I have to displace the beast out of the way, so I screwed up there. Just top everyone back up and get back into position. And it's pretty much rinse and repeat. I probably should have got my wild mushroom up a lot quicker there. I don't know how long it goes on for, but that's a mistake on my part. I should have got my wild mushroom straight back up. And that's pretty much it, guys. Rinse and repeat, keep everyone topped up, deal with mechanics, and keep your buffs rolling. So, should you play a Resto Druid? Hell yes! Overall, the Resto Druid is one of the strongest healing specs in the game in terms of raw healing output, and it's a spec I quickly fell in love with despite previously having very little healing experience. For me, the Resto Druid is extremely versatile and can deal with most situations you'll come across in both PvE and PvP. It's a fun, easy to learn spec, but still has enough depth to keep you interested when progressing through endgame. The Resto Druid was the first class I've ever done any kind of serious raiding on, and due to the amount of options you have in your abilities, it's a spec that's kept me interested and made me want to push myself into getting the most out of my numbers. For a new player leveling a Resto Druid, I think you'll find it really easy to get used to and rewarding at the same time. A lot of people tend to shy away from healing because they feel more responsibility and are often scared to mess up, but the Resto Druid has a very simple and forgiving priority system, with multiple abilities capable of achieving the same result. In 5-man dungeons, you'll be able to deal with everything that's thrown at you, from large AoE damage to hard-hitting single target damage. Moving out of the fire will be easy, and eventually you'll gain more awareness of your surroundings with the ability to cast on the move. Once you hit level cap and start gearing up for raids, you'll likely notice how much more powerful you'll become with increased haste and mastery, as druids scale really well with these stats. Once you're at the level of raiding with a guild or through the group finder, you'll eventually notice that there's a lot you can do to maximise both your healing and mana efficiency. I actually don't mind that it's a spec that struggles with mana conservation, as from my point of view it adds an extra layer of gameplay to the spec. My mission whenever I'm raiding on my Resto Druid is to do as much healing as possible whilst using as little mana as possible, and at the same time taking as little avoidable damage as I can, hopefully maintaining close to 100% uptime on Life Bloom and Harmony. And after downing a boss whilst achieving all of these things, I get a great sense of accomplishment different to the one I've previously felt from playing a different role. For anyone thinking about giving healing a try, I definitely recommend the Resto Druid because it's such a great all-round healer and a ton of fun to play. So that's it for this video, guys. I've done another video similar to this one for the Balanced Druid if you want to check that out. I hope I've provided you with all the information you need to get started playing Resto. If you yourself are a Resto Druid and notice that I said something wrong in this video, or have any tips you could give me, I'd love to read it in the comments below because the Resto Druid is my main class and I'm always wanting to improve my skills. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like because it always helps, and maybe even subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos similar to this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.